The Supreme Court of Canada says British Columbia's safe injection sites for addicts can stay open. Vancouver's supervised injection clinic, along with the BC government, say the program reduces overdoses and infections and helps curb crime. The Harper government says it does not, and the government wanted the sites closed. CTV's Mercedes Stevenson is in Ottawa. She joins us now to help explain this decision to us. Mercedes, give us a little background here. What is this all about, and how did this issue end up at the Supreme Court?
Well, Dan, it's a landmark case, very important issue being discussed today, and there's a few things that this breaks down to. Essentially, the site doesn't supply drugs, but it allows users to inject in what is called a safe environment, and that means clean needles, it means supervised injections. If somebody starts to go into an overdose, there are medical staff on site who are able to help them, as well as access to rehabilitation for those who want to take that approach. The Harper government wanted it closed down because they said it is not the government's role to provide access or facilitation to drugs in any way, shape, or form. What this breaks down to is the collision between healthcare and criminal law. The government said, look, this is about criminal law, this is provision of drugs, this is not the government's role. And the province was saying, no, this is about healthcare, and that is a provincial jurisdiction. So you have, on the one hand, the criminal code and criminal law, which is federal, and on the other hand, you have the provinces, which provide healthcare. This went through two courts in BC. Both courts ruled in favor of Insite. It went up to the Supreme Court of Canada, who has just ruled again in favor of the drug injection site. And two of the key questions here had to do with, in terms of the addicts who were there, whether or not they had basically not the right to inject drugs, but whether or not taking away the ability to inject them would force them into an environment that would cause more harm. If you're causing somebody undue harm, that's a problem. And it also had to do with jurisdictions and healthcare. And if healthcare is the provinces versus the criminal code, which is a federal level, it got really mixed up there. So basically, this ruling has to do with all of those issues. But addicts, of course, often engage in criminal behavior. And one of the things that this court was looking at today is whether or not removing this site might expose them to more harm, because they might go about injecting the drugs in a way that was more dangerous, or go about criminal behaviors which were more dangerous for them than if they had access to the site.
So Mercedes, if we're looking at a conflict of jurisdictions here between federal and provincial, between healthcare and the criminal code, is this setting a precedent for any other discussions that may come up in this area, or is the sense that this is a one-off?
Well, it may potentially set a precedent for similar clinics that may, want to be set up across Canada. Whether or not they will have their own particular battles with the government, we'd have to see, but it could be a precedent-setting case in terms of saying that if clinics exist, and keep in mind it's not providing drugs, it's providing an injection site for these drugs, are deemed to be of a primary value for health care, then there's a possibility that that might encourage people who want to set up these kinds of sites in other provinces. There's now a precedent saying that they are number one for health care, and that can override the criminal code, and there can be exemptions found by the Supreme Court of Canada that those sites could be allowed. But whether or not they would have to fight the government in each case is another question.
Okay, CTV's Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, today the Supreme Court of Canada unanimously ruled in favor of Insite and against years of conservative interference. The Supreme Court found that this government arbitrarily infringed on the rights of individuals to receive the treatment and help they so desperately need. Now, this government has an opportunity here to take off their ideological blinders and support a vital public service that has saved lives and given people hope. Will they do that?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Although we are disappointed with the Supreme Court of Canada's decision today, we will comply. We believe that the system should be focused on preventing people from becoming drug addicts. A key pillar of the national anti-drug strategy is prevention and treatment for those with drug dependency. As part of our strategy, we have made significant investments to strengthen existing treatment efforts through the treatment action plan. We will be reviewing the court decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Vancouver East.
Mr. Speaker, that's precisely what Insite does. Since it opened in 2003 in my riding, fatal overdoses have dropped by over a third. More people get treatment as Insite is there to connect people with the services they need. Today, the people who use this service have had their voices heard. The Supreme Court agrees, health professionals agree, international health experts agree. Will the Conservatives admit their failed approach and acknowledge that Insite protects public health and saves lives? Will they stop being the barrier to this very important service?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I stated earlier, our government believes that spending more money on treatment and to support to help people get off drugs is the best investments we can make. And as I said earlier as well, the decision, we will be reviewing the decision. In fairness, this decision was made 2 hours ago, and I stated that we will be reviewing and we will be reviewing it. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La décision unanime rendue par la Cour suprême est sans équivoque. Insite permet de sauver des vies sans compromettre la sécurité publique. Mais au lieu de regarder ces faits et les études scientifiques, ce gouvernement a passé des années devant les cours auprès des contribuables à essayer de mettre un frein au projet Insite. Monsieur le Président, est-ce que ce gouvernement va enfin mettre l'idéologie de côté et agir dans le meilleur intérêt de la santé et de la sécurité publique de tous les Canadiens?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I stated earlier, and I will repeat my answer to the first question, we are again disappointed with the decision, but we will comply. And I stated earlier that we believe that the system should be focused on preventing people from becoming drug addicts in the first place. The key pillar of our national anti-drug strategy is prevention and treatment for those with drug dependencies. And I said earlier that we will be reviewing the Supreme Court decision and we will be doing that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bonavista, Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor.
Mr. Speaker, our government's national anti-drug strategy aims to prevent Canadians from starting to take drugs and to provide treatment for those with drug dependencies. This morning, the Supreme Court of Canada rendered a decision that may have an impact on those with drug dependencies. I'm wondering if the Minister of Health would like to provide further comment to this House on that decision.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for that question. And I stated earlier, although that we are disappointed with the Supreme Court of Canada's decision this morning, we will comply, and we always believe that the system should be focused on preventing people from becoming drug addicts in the first place. Our government believes that spending more money on treatment and to support individuals to get the help they need to get off drugs is the best investment we can provide to Canadians. As part of the strategy, we have made significant investments to strengthen existing treatment efforts through the Treatment Action Plan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's been 113 days and still no response from the Muskoka minister.
Opposite, it's two for the price of one because I'll be there as well. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions with my colleague, the Honourable
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, doctors around the world have been saying it, the CMA has been saying it, and now the Supreme Court has said it unanimously. Insite in Vancouver saves lives. That's why the Liberal government supported it from the start, choosing life over death. With today's hearty slap in the face by Canada's highest court, will this government finally admit it was wrong in its ideological attacks against Insite? And what does the minister mean? We will be reviewing it. Will the government respect the Supreme Court's decision and stop attacking Insite?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, not to repeat my answers that I provided earlier, the decision was released 2 hours ago, and we will review the decision of the Supreme Court. I'm sure the member opposite have not had the opportunity either to review the question, so we will do our part in due due diligence and review the Supreme Court decisions. Thank you.
Honourable member for Winnipeg North.